Welcome viewers to tonight's special stream. I'm your host, and this is Gil Elvgren Part 6. We're chugging along here, and there's a couple of more. Well, there's probably going to be 5 or 6 more of Elvgren before I actually start showing you guys more of the book and all the different images from there. Side note, this is for adults, this is for a mature audience, so I'm going to rate this NC-17. There's some things that might not be suitable for kids, so you guys might want to tune in to another stream. But for now, this is going to be different. It's not going to be showing that much of Gil Elvgren's work. I'm just going to show you guys as an intro, as an introduction, talk about Gil Elvgren real quick before I continue on talking about his influences, people who really inspired him to become such an amazing illustrator. It's a lot of fun. I'm having a blast talking about it. I'm having a blast showing you guys and talking about their work and giving you insight about who they were and how much influence they had in the illustration world, especially at the beginning of like the 20th century, I'm gonna say. So without further ado, this is Gil Elvgren right here. Born in 1914 and active all the way until 1980. He was the most important pinup and glamour artist of the 20th century. One of his most recognizable works is from his Coca-Cola illustrations. Elvgren's Coca-Cola subjects portrayed the American dream of a secure, comfortable lifestyle, but his well-known illustrations for magazine stories often captured timeless scenes that reflected the hopes, fears, and joys of their readers. In the field of advertising, alongside his Coca-Cola work, he contributed to campaigns for prominent American companies and products such as Orange Crush, Shields Beer, Sealy Mattress, General Electric, Sylvania, and Napa Auto Parts. With his work for Brown and Bigelow, the Coca-Cola ads, and other national advertising assignments, and his magazine work, Elvgren was much in demand as an artist. His time booked up more than a year ahead of his output. Early on, Elvgren tore out magazine covers and individual pages bearing illustrations by artists he admired or who interested him, which became his ritual. These pages became a comprehensive collection that would later influence both his painting technique and his approach to particular commissions. If you guys missed out the previous ones, long before he attended his first class in 1933, Elvgren had been impressed by the early pretty girl illustrators like Charles Donna Gibson, Howard Chandler Christie, Harrison Fisher, as well as McClellan Barkley, Haddon H. Sundblom, Andrew Loomis, Charles E. Chambers, and Pruitt Carter. And all these artists I've gone over in the previous stream. So if you guys missed that out, you can go to the video section, filter it based on collection, and you'll see a folder called Highlights. You could click on that and you could see all the previous streams, all the previous Gil Elvgren streams, and catch up. They're all worth it. They're all talking about very different stuff. They're all showing beautiful paintings and works of art, and I really go into depth about each one of them, talking about what's unique about their styles, their subjects, how their technique was used, and it's a whole lot of fun. It's worth watching each and every one of them. But today I am going to continue talking about one of Gil Elvgren's close friends and also admirers, Norman Rockwell. So I'm just going to quickly go through all of these until you guys can see the most recent one. It's an extensive collection, and again, you guys can catch up with that on more of his work in the previous streams, where I really talk about each and every one of these paintings, what I like about them, what's amazing about the work. Beautiful collection. Absolutely love his painting. Love the style as well. It really is a mixture between realism and something stylized of its own. You could see an element of Norman Rockwell himself that's unlike other artists. And to say, that despite them not being like him, they're also very good and unique in their own way. As you can see, this is very different from Gil Elvgren, but they both have something that's absolutely amazing and captivating about their work. So we're getting closer to where I left off last time. I mean, look at this stuff. It's incredible. The way I'm going to say this is right about here. But yeah, the way he mixes colors, the kind of texture that comes from his mixture of color is incredible. It's flat image, but because of how he uses the colors and how he mixes them and how he paints in general, it just gives this even more real than real feel. I don't know if that really makes sense, but just take a look at the hands, looking at the hands of the salesman. And I think this is a really interesting painting because it kind of highlights, I guess, the progress, the progress that has been made through the Industrial Revolution, I guess, in a way that people don't have to resort to really basic and laborious tasks as much, so there is definitely benefits through the history of what happened in the Industrial Revolution. It's just that capitalism really destroyed the potential of progress that can come from it, the ability for us to live even more of a harmonious and progressive society, and just stifle things that only capitalizing and making profits after they've established all these mass-producing companies and machines, et cetera, and just kind of stifled progress on all other grounds. Anyways, so this kind of highlights that. You see people who basically would have to take their food and bury it or just have it hanging in underwater to maintain its freshness, whereas this guy comes up and he shows them you no longer have to do that. You could keep it inside your house and you could store food inside of it, which I think is just a cool indication of our times, basically. This isn't something that was present as much, I don't know, 200 years ago. It was a real challenge when it came to that for a lot of people, I'm going to say. But yeah, I thought it was a cool painting to just highlight that, and just again to show how amazing his compositional work is. Just being able to create this with yet so much white all around. There isn't that much detail, but the way he constructed it compositionally, you could see where the focus is, what the subject of the painting is, and also, I think, as I was mentioning earlier, looking at the salesman's coat, it really does have this three-dimensional element to it, despite you seeing that in their faces even it's slightly stylized. And something that I really like about Norman Rockwell and Gil Elvgren, and one of my favorite comic book artists who you guys have been seeing, John Buscema. They all kind of balance this dichotomy between realism and fiction or fantasy. They both have that element. If you look at John Buscema's work, his face expressions, the figure, the anatomy, it really does retain a very mature, realistic kind of feel to it, despite lacking hyper realism to it. And yet it does have this fantastical element to it. It still looks like a comic book. That's the best way that I could describe it. It really it really highlights that. And I think the same thing is with Gil Elvgren. If you looked at his paintings, even though they're very well rendered and there's 3 dimension to them, unlike John Buscema's work, the way he paints them, the way that he adds curvature through paint and light and shadows and colors, there's still a fantastical element to the women and their faces. He exaggerates just a tiny bit, which kind of brings that fantastical element, that stylized sort of approach to the female figure and the faces and their expressions. And the same thing with Norman Rockwell, as you could see. I'm going to say this really... Where is this painting? I mean, this one is incredible. Absolutely amazing. There was one with the kids. They're standing there holding the baseball bat. Where is that? There you go. Oh, no, it's not baseball bat. That's another one. But this one right here, you could see they're super lanky. I mean, part of it has to do with, like, of course, being teenagers and having growing pains, but it's exaggerated. I'm going to say, like, the size of their torso in comparison to the length of their legs is incredibly different. But there's a certain style to it. You look at their face and it's very well rendered. Of course, it's giving, like, 3-dimension. If you look at their hands, if you look at the legs, details on the legs, like the color and how he shades them, it gives a real, like, 3-dimensional, realistic sort of vibe. But there's elements that give it more of, like, this, like, fantastical, almost, you know, illustrator kind of, or even maybe slightly comic bookish feel. But yeah, all three artists share that element, I'm going to say, and they all do it in their own kind of way. It's not like they're similar to one another. So I think that's really cool. It's one of the things that I really appreciate about art in general, is the diversity and the individualistic approach to subjects, to painting and to art in general. So just going back to where we left off, and now moving on here. A repeating theme with Norman Rockwell, and again, this is something that people would consider to be Norman-esque. You know, it's slightly, I'm gonna say, negative sort of dig at his work, because it records these, like, very heartwarming elements of reality that aren't really as true. You know, that's the critique that art critics and even other artists would use towards Norman Rockwell at the time. They would say, oh, it's really Norman-esque. You know, it's really quiche and it's really bourgeois, you know, way of his topics, or what he's trying to focus on, or the messages are. But there was a period where he focused more on, like, modern day problems, some things that are really really important for people to understand, or for people to see. So he used his talent, he used his ability to, like, render human beings in such a way, and you guys have seen it briefly, and you could also listen about that in the previous stream, where I talk about the 4 truths and the problems we all live with, and there was another one, I forget what it was, but those really highlight some very important elements of our day-to-day life. You know, certain things that we should appreciate, that we should recognize, and we should understand and see how important they are, in considering how things are worse in other places, and what's really valuable, in a sense. Paintings like The Problems We All Live With highlights racism and how disgusting those behaviors are. And this painting is incredible, and it's still hanging up, I believe, in the White House. And it depicts this historical icon of the time, Ruby Bridges, who experienced the hateful, disgusting behavior, and was able to actually meet with Barack Obama with that painting set in the background in 2010 or 11. So it was a really powerful moment. It was very important point in history for both. I'm going to say Ruby Bridges, especially considering what she's gone through, and being able to see that there was a black president in the White House after all that she's went through. So it was a very powerful painting. It was a very powerful moment, I believe. So yeah, Norman Rockwell went beyond just, these heartwarming sort of paintings that you're seeing right here, which is like, an innocent child feeding a bunch of adorable looking puppies. It's still a beautiful painting, and I think it still serves its purpose in reminding people to just be kind, to be caring, and to really find value in things outside of themselves. And I think this kind of image shows that, this kid just really wants to feed and make these puppies happy. And like, you could see that the mother is really thankful for it, and she's really appreciating that he's feeding her babies, basically. But yeah, it's an amazing, it's done amazingly. The rendition of it is amazing. Just looking at the coat of some of the puppies and seeing how many different colors he used, you don't see it a painting. You just kind of, you see them as if though they're alive in a sense. So he did an incredible job. Even looking at the mother and looking at the muscles, the details in the muscles of the legs, it's so well done. It's so realistic. So it's just like, I don't know, just a couple of pixels away from just being like a photo, basically. Also captured a real emotion in a kid's face as well. There's this like, I guess, I don't know, serene sort of look on his face, and he's just taking in the moment and really appreciating it. It doesn't look like there's somebody who's posing, right, or just like is really conscious of the camera. He's just able to capture that as well. All right, so yeah, moving on. I don't want to get stuck on Norman Rockwell for the entire stream. I do want to introduce you guys to a new artist. We're coming close. There's only like maybe 2 or 3 paintings left after this one. But yeah, I really liked this one for its color mixture. There's like, and that's another thing that Norman Rockwell is excellent at, is unifying everything despite having different colors, or different uses. I'm going to say here it's less so of like, of that, because colors are all pretty much close to one another, from his vest to like, I'm going to say the color of the chimneys and the roof. It's all similar in tone, it's not incredibly vibrant. But still, it's rich enough to stand out. There's a crispness to it, as well as the face, and on the face, seeing all these different colors, from like the red behind his ear, and a little bit of his cheeks to like the shadows towards the front. You could see that the sun is actually hitting the back and not so much towards the front of him. And he's able to do that. He plays with with the lighting as well, and pushes some things back and brings some things forward, while just kind of having everything unified as well. From the sky all the way down to the bottom where the sunset is, you could see how the gradient of the colors really is such a smooth transition, but yet it still has its presence all around. Like, there's still some elements of orange all the way at the top where the blue is. His painting technique has this, like, I don't know, I guess like very interesting mixture of colors. It's not just, let's say, brown for the vest. You could see there's some elements of blue and some elements of orange and some elements of red. He has such a great understanding of color mixing that he's able to do that, and adds more life to the drawing, especially like looking at the pants too, where the, I guess, handkerchief is hanging. Like that area, you could see there's like a multitude of colors there. There's a bunch of different colors mixed in, as well as with his hair. There's no sign of anatomical incorrectness there. Everything is so precise. So beyond just color mixing, beyond composition, beyond playing with light, the light source while bringing things to the front, and some things towards the back. He's also incredibly good at anatomy, from the texture of his shoes, like looking at the shoes and seeing how well he's captured that, to the hands, to the face, to the hair, all of it. As well as like looking at the rooster, right? What he's holding. You could see how well he's able to do rust and all the different colors that are mixed in to make it seem that way. Absolutely incredible. Love this painting. Gonna move on to the next one here. Another element of the dog, but I'm gonna say this has something to do with either him getting knocked out by an admirer, or I'm gonna say more closely knocked out by the admirer's boyfriend. Like, this guy was interested in this woman and her boyfriend was there and he socked him in the eye. That's why his eye is black. That's why he's holding the flowers and they're just like kind of all over the place, because somebody sent them flying. But just well done. Again, holding the emotion that's in his face to the textures of the hands themselves, to the texture of the shoes, like the soles of the shoes. Really love that. And a great use again of like composition. There isn't much around him, but he uses white in a way where it just kind of adds to the story. It's this kind of like sunken feeling of after being defeated, not just physically but emotionally as well. Went out there, he put himself out there, he wanted to confess his admiration or attraction to this woman, and he ended up with a black eye. So it just kind of like using that white in the background makes you just focus on that, and you're kind of in that moment with him. Like nothing, everything kind of dissipates around, and you're just left with this feeling or understanding or realization of what just happened. But I'm gonna talk about that more in my other introduction for other artists, and how those artists were well known for using white as the background. And that artist that does that also influenced Norman Rockwell. So I'm going to say his ability to use white in his paintings really does stem from that influence. It really does stem from this. Another amazing artist, and I'm going to just see real quick if that's who's coming up. Yeah, that's right. He is coming up next, and you guys are going to get familiar with his work. I'm also a huge fan of this painter, and I've discovered him through this process of like digging from painters and reading about them and learning more and more. I've discovered him through this search, and I instantly became a fan. And it's beautiful. Also, very unique style. It's different from all these other artists that you guys have been seeing. Different from the ones that I mentioned that influenced Gil Elvgren. Different from Elvgren. Different from Howard Pyle, the one who pioneered a lot of these artists. The Brandywine School of philosophy, and him influencing all these other artists. All of them have very unique styles. All of them have their own element. So yeah, this next artist is going to be a real treat to introduce you guys to. All right, so yeah, going on to the next one. This I think is another example of how he's able to just kind of play around with this like realism, but also fantastical element. You look at their faces, and there's so much character from the guy on the left. And how overly exaggerated, I'm going to say, the size of his nose is. But even like how he drew the mouth, I absolutely love it all around. I think it's such a fun drawing. I think it probably was a blast to paint and draw this guy. Just really brings the whole scene to life as well. Again, great use of white. It kind of centers the focus on these guys. And it's not, as you guys have seen, it's not a way to cover up not being able to draw backgrounds, not being able to draw details. He's incredibly capable of that. It's just the style. It's a choice of telling a story, just having to focus on these two guys. So as you might have noticed, it says the endless debate, so these two guys who have like an opinion on something, and one of them is just really hammering it in while the other one is just resisting. Doesn't care. He's sticking to his guns and he's saying no. And it looks like they're arguing about baseball based on what he's holding in his hands. What the other guy is also reading, it seems like it's a debate about baseball. But I think it's just really funny. And of course, looking at the other guy, the one on the right, the exaggeration of one eye as opposed to the other, it kind of gives this like Popeye element to it, which I think is pretty funny. But yeah, again, there's like mixture of like realism. Like you could see in one side of it, really realistic rendition where, if you kind of like put your hand and close that exaggerated eye, the eye that's kind of popping out. And just to note, this is very much like Popeye, because if you look at the image of Popeye, he also has one eye that's bigger and the other one's kind of shut, and he has that pipe in his mouth. It looks a little bit on the grumpy side, so I think Norman Rockwell is kind of playing into that for humor. But yeah, if you close that one side and you look at the other, you'll see that it really instantly becomes like a very realistic painting. So again, just a display of how he's able to like play around with that. Great use of colors. Like again, this highlights how he's able to just unify everything. Nothing sticks out. The guy's wearing a green sweater, or a sweater vest or whatever. And there's like many different colors in there, but yet it doesn't scream out attention in comparison to everything else. There's that guy on the left. There's something very characteristic about him. There's also that heater in the background. All that present, yet the entire painting is unified. Your eye isn't darting to just one thing. Nothing is incredibly focused in the painting, despite the various use of color. You want to look at the guy on the right just as much as you want to look at the guy on the left. And you do take in the chair and the furnace in the background, and as well as the dog. Another painting with the dog present. Incredible work. Beautiful stuff. Moving on to the next one. I'm going to say there's also something different about this, right, in comparison. So he kind of changes things up. Like, not incredible amount of white here, right? You're not seeing that contrast. In fact, it looks more painterly than any other, I'm going to say, any of the recent ones that we just seen. It has this like painterly quality to it. Everything has, the colors are kind of subdued, right? There's like multitude of colors here, but they're all kind of, again, close in range in terms of like how hot they are or how bright they are, because there is red, there is blue in the background, there's some pink even in the chest on the bottom left, but none of it, again, it doesn't call for attention over anything else. And you still focus on this kid playing dress up with like adult clothes, something that we've all done as children at some point. We wanted to see what we look like when we're wearing those kind of things. So I'm gonna say this is another like normal-esque moment, something that captures growing up and being a kid and just these like sweet, funny moments. But no, I don't have anything against it. I like it. I think it's great. And I think that he's an incredible artist. He's an incredible painter. And given that he's done work that really does touch up on important subjects, it does say that he does care, that he is on the right side of history and he does want to make things better. which I can't say a lot for some of the other artists, actually. There's been plenty who, I guess, promoted war of the times. It was a rough period. It was a really terrible time, and which should really say how people should see more of that and understand how insane it was. How many innocent lives were taken because of that, because of negligent politics. There was a lot of inner workings as well, people fueling each other internationally, or I'm gonna say poking the beehive internationally, which is still something that happens now. People meddling in other affairs, international affairs, in one way or another, for profits, for whatever, and eventually things exploding into these crazy scenarios. So some of these artists, they probably just didn't know what else to do other than get rid of Nazis, and yet here we are still with a bunch of people who are trying to promote and advocate Nazi behavior, Nazi values. The whole superior, inferior, better than, less than, all that garbage. It's pushed in schools, it's pushed in work environments and cultures, and it's promoting more and more narcissistic, sociopathic behavior, where people try to do as much as they can to prove themselves otherwise, of being like, oh, I'm not inferior, I'm gonna make this person feel that way, and then so on and so forth. And this crazy loop ends up creating more and more crazy behaviors that get exacerbated. Anyways, how did I get onto this? Just talking about the idea of Norm-Wall-esque moments versus problems that we're living with. But going back to this painting again, just how there's a lot going on here. There's a dog present once again, but there's so much detail going on in the background. Obviously, this is an attic that this kid went to, and there's stuff that's in a chest, there's stuff that's on the table, there's little jars and big jars, jugs, I'm gonna say, that are on the table as well, and they're so well rendered. But yet again, it's unified together in this painting, and the center of the focus is still the kid, despite all this other stuff that's present all around. So great work by him. He's really able to work all of these things together into a unified, harmonious painting. All right, I'm gonna move on to the next one. And this, I don't believe, it is Norman Rockwell. That is funny, because for a moment there, I thought this was from the next artist that I'm going to introduce you guys to, and maybe this is going to be a good outro of Norman Rockwell and into the next one. But yeah, this I think is very unique. If you pay attention and remember the face, there's something very unique about it, right? I'm going to say it has something to do with the eyes, as well as how it's painted. The way it's rendered. It's very different from the other ones that we've seen. But yet it still retains the Norm-Wall-esque quality. How he's able to mix all these different colors. Looking at the face, you could see that there's various or multitudes of color there. There's a lot of yellow, some orange, some reds, and I'm gonna say maybe even purples, light purple. I'm gonna say a mix between purple and gray to give that shadow form that's around the middle of the face, or the side of the face rather, to all the little different colors that are used on his jacket as well. Still Norm-Wall-esque quality, but there is something different about it, and I think that's because he was very much influenced by this artist that I'm going to introduce you guys to next. Let's just see. Let's see if that's going to be the case or if there's another painting from Norman Rockwell. Yes. All right. So that was it. This is the last painting from Norman Rockwell, an incredible artist. I highly encourage you guys to explore more of his paintings because I haven't touched up on all of them. He's done over 4,000 paintings. I'm going to say over 4,000, not just 4,000. But I also wanted to highlight how there is this like geometric sort of composition here. You got the coat and the hat that's on one side, and it goes up to like the box, the telecommunicator being at the top, and then you got the straight beams of the benches that he's sitting on, and then at the bottom you got the book, and its position is just kind of taking it into like this hill form, right? Starting with the hill of the hat to like the square of the telecommunicator to like the hill of the book. So it just has this like waving, speaking of waving, you could see all the wires as well. So it's this waving sort of pattern of objects in the painting, filling up the entire scene in a way. So very cool, excellent composition there from Norman Rockwell. All right, so that was Norman. And here you guys are going to be introduced to, that's Howard Pyle, J.C. Leyendecker, 1874 to 1951. Now, why do I include the dates? Well, for one, it's to pay tribute to such an amazing artist, and also to just give you guys an idea of like what this era was, who influenced who was like a contemporary. And you could see that J.C. Leyendecker was a bit earlier than Norman Rockwell, so they're kind of close in range of age, but you could see how they could be an influence. So just immediately looking at this, can you guys recognize that Norman Rockwell was influenced by J.C. Leyendecker? First of all, in the previous painting, and I'm going to just show it to you real quick. I'm going to fade this out. So pay attention to that, and then look at the... Can I go back to all the way to... No, I'm going to have to skip through all of them. Or wait. There you go. So take a look how there are these like little etchings, right, on the jacket. There's some etchings on the bench itself, even on the telecommunicator, and some on the jacket or the shirt that he's wearing. There's a little bit of that etchy style. So just take a look, and also pay attention to the face. Like, look at the eyes, and you could see how that's also present in Leyendecker's approach. So this artist wasn't just inspiration for Norman Rockwell. He's also a big inspiration to the point of this entire stream, the special stream, Gil Elvgren. He really influenced both of them, and of course beyond. So you could see, take a look at the I guess, I don't know, what is it exactly that he's wearing? He's some sort of celebratory banner that he's wrapped around, I'm going to say. But take a look at the inside. See the little etching there? It's kind of present in the previous painting that I showed you guys of done by Norman Rockwell. So you could see how that kind of played into it. And as I move through these images, you guys will see what I was talking about when I was talking about the face. But anyways, another thing to note, and this is something that you'll see, or you have seen if you've been following along, in Elvgren's work as well. So you saw it in Norman Rockwell, but you also noticed it in Elvgren's work, and that is the use of white, and how he could use that starkness, basically, yet still maintain a really interesting scene. the use of white is part of the style. It's part of the painting, the purpose of the painting. It's a very like designerly sort of approach. I'm going to say like a graphic designer sort of feel to it, an advertising sort of feel to it. But anyways, just looking at his painting, and you could see how it's different immediately, despite it still maintaining that illustrator's sort of vibe, right? And playing that middle ground of like realism, yet still slightly fantastic. He's another artist who's really good at playing those elements, and comprising and painting from them. So I'm going to give you guys a little bit of an introduction about Leyendecker. We're going to talk about who he was. So J.C. Leyendecker was an illustrator and was considered to be an outstanding American illustrator of the early 20th century. He is best known for his poster, book, and advertising illustrations, the trade character known as the Arrow Collar Man, and his numerous covers for the Saturday Evening Post. Another company that you guys see is like a continuous theme with a lot of these artists. A lot of these artists worked for the Saturday Evening Post. So Gil Elvgren, Norman Rockwell, I believe, as well. They all kind of followed this footstep, and all these companies kind of followed these artists. They all went along with it. So anyways, going back, between 1896 to 1950, he painted more than 400 magazine covers. During the golden age of American illustration, for the Saturday Evening Post alone, he produced 322 covers and many advertising illustrations for its interior pages. No other artist, until the arrival of Norman Rockwell 2 decades later, was so solidly unified. What does that say? Intertwined with one publication. He virtually invented the whole idea of modern magazine design. This is like a quote. As the primary cover illustration, as the primary cover illustration illustrator for the enormously popular The Saturday Evening Post for much of the 20th century, Leyendecker's work both reflected and helped mold many of the visual aspects of the era's culture in America. So that's how big of an influence he was. Like, his work really started to lay down the groundwork for the era's culture in America. That's huge. That's a huge accomplishment coming from a single artist. The mainstream image of Santa Claus as a jolly fat man in a red fur-trimmed coat was popularized by Leyendecker, as was the image of the New Year baby. And you guys are going to see these images as I go through them. The tradition of giving flowers as a gift on Mother's Day was started by Leyendecker's May 30th, 1914 Saturday Evening Post cover depicting a young bellhop carrying a certain type of flowers. I can't really, I can't read my own handwriting in this instance, so you guys will see it. It was created as a commemoration of President Woodrow Wilson's declaration of Mother's Day as an official holiday that year. So he did have ties to the president as well of that time, and he helped create basically Mother's Day along with Woodrow Wilson. So that's pretty amazing. What an amazing accomplishment, right? Huge change in history. Leyendecker was a chief influence upon and friend of Norman Rockwell. So here you go. That's just like a blatant statement right there. Who was pallbearer at Leyendecker's funeral. In particular, the early work of Norman Rockwell for the Saturday Evening Post bears a strong resemblance to that of Leyendecker. While today it is generally accepted that Norman Rockwell established the best-known visual images of Americana, in many cases they are derivatives of Leyendecker's work, or reinterpretation of visual themes established by Rockwell's idol. The visual style of Leyendecker's art inspired the graphics in the Dagger of Amon-Ra, a video game, as well as the design in Team Fortress 2. So the visual style of Leyendecker's art inspired the graphics in those two games. You guys should check it out. So one of them is the Dagger of Amon-Ra, and the other one, of course, that's something that I think a lot of people are familiar with, Team Fortress 2, which I'm like, but the style is present. Leyendecker's work inspired George Lucas and will be part of the collection of the anticipated Lucas Museum of Narrative Art. So that's another huge accomplishment. I mean, this guy really checked all the boxes before leaving. Leyendecker's Beat Up Boy football hero, which appears on the cover of the Saturday Evening Post on November 21st, 1914, sold for $4.12 million on May 7th, 2021. $4.12 million. And that's just a single painting. The previous world record for J.C. Leyendecker's was set in December 2020 when Southby sold his 1930 work, Carousel Ride, for $516,000. All right, so that pretty much sums it up. I mean, you guys heard it. This guy influenced so much. His incredible work has really changed a lot in history and influenced a lot of history. And you guys will see why. I mean, his work is incredible. It's beautiful renditions. Let's just back up one. This, I'm going to say, is probably his earlier work, because as you guys will progress as we move on through the slideshow, you'll see that he really does have a very specific style. There's something very, very unique about his work. But here I'm going to say it has a very realistic sort of rendition, more so than anything else you'll see going forward, I believe. But yet still, it kind of highlights the decadence of a certain period. Like, again, he's born in 1874, so in the 1800s, I'm going to say early 1900s were still sort of influenced by that era. So this is like, high society. This is the rich people of the time, and he just kind of recorded that decadence of that era. And I think it's a really beautiful rendition of that. Just going based off of like the material and looking at the pants of the guy, and just seeing the folds there and how he's able to really paint velvet. Basically, he's able to bring that material to life through just paint. It's incredible. I absolutely love it. But here again, it's a demonstration of something he's incredibly good at. Just like Norman Rockwell, just like Gil Elvgren as well, is his understanding of anatomy. Like, there's nothing anatomically wrong about what he's done. Like, from the hands to the face expressions to overall composition, or the body itself. And just notice how their pose is so natural. There's nothing stiff about it. From the guy leaning on a chair and, leaning into her, basically, and the pose of his body, it's angled. It still shows a certain level of, natural feel to it. There's, like I mentioned, nothing stiff about it. As well as with her body language suggests a little bit of apprehensiveness, but at the same time confidence, right? Like, she's confident in her chair, in a position that she's in, and her face just shows that as well. Beautiful work there, I think. And I also really enjoy the plant in the background, as that being kind of like a break from, I'm going to say, more of a geometric sort of vibe, looking at her dress and the lines on there. I'm going to say there is an element of geometric shapes there. Whereas the plants are kind of like the opposite of that. They have like more of a curvature to it. Like the leaves themselves have curvature, the way that they're hanging, they're also very curved. Whereas like the lines on the dress have more of an angular sort of element to them, despite it being kind of chaotic as well. Like there's a lot going on in there. But if you start to focus in, you'll see that there's like a lot of triangular sort of shapes around. All right, so that's enough about that one. You guys have seen this one. This is, I believe, that football player that sold for a lot of money. I'm not going to be 100% on that, but I wouldn't be surprised. I think it's a very iconic image of his work, something that really displays his style and the use of color and painting. Oh, or it might be this one. I think this might be it. This is like the brawler, football brawler. But yeah, this, again, very unique. Like looking at how he painted the face, right? It's still very realistic, but look at the brushstrokes. Like you could see actual brushstrokes on there. So it's like this mixture between really realistic rendition mixed in with these interesting marks. You could even see it on his chest a little bit, and also on his arm, on his left arm, how he uses like these lines, yet there is variation and gradation to his shading to also pop out these features, pop out the part of the chest, pop out certain muscles on the arms, as well as all over the face. There's all different shades there mixed in with these cross-hatching sort of patterns. And you could even see that in the background. The background just kind of says it, yes, that's what you're seeing, and it's on purpose. Those lines are there intentionally, just as they are loud and proud in the background. But I think it's really cool, and this is what I was talking about, the ability to mix between realism and style. Very stylized, fantastic element. What body are you going to see that has those sort of lines on it? That sort of reflection on it. So very cool work, and he also uses, like, I'm going to say, some geometrical elements. Like you could see like these black lines, right, that are going towards the front, right? We're looking at his legs. There's a line that crosses, going across, that brings this flatness towards the front. So it looks like the legs are behind that line. Whereas if you look up at the line that's going across at the top, his head is in front of it. So he's just kind of playing around with these perspectives, right? You would imagine that there would be some sort of like unified sort of element to them, but they're kind of the opposite. One is towards the front, one is towards the back, and it pops out this person more, gives it more dimension. Aside from just a rendering, there's also the background, very simple, just lines going across that pop out the drawing more. Like just try to imagine those lines not being there and the drawing just being against the white background. I think it would be a little bit more flat. Of course, not completely, because of how he rendered everything. It's incredible. But I think just adding these two simple elements intentionally brings out the image more. So cool work right there. Cool stuff. So here, I'm going to say, just remember Rockwell's painting right before we switched over to J.C. Leyendecker. But remember the face, right? Like the eyes specifically. It's very similar. But as you guys heard from that little intro about J.C. Leyendecker, he really was a huge influence on Norman Rockwell. And here again, this is his incredible use of white as the background while having this like really detailed design on the couch, you know, from the little pinstripe lines going all the way on the back of it, to like the little bird designs in perspective to the curvature of the couch itself. But here you got these two gentlemen, kind of different, right? Both are obviously high society, and yet they still have this like unique element about them. And this is kind of like, I'm gonna say, the interesting theme of personalities. Maybe the guy on the left is the type to you know, undermine people and be a ladder climber. You know, he's the type who really would do certain things like that, whereas the other guy might not be. He might be a little bit more of a bookworm, you know, somebody who is more conscious of things and is a thinker, with a slight indication of maybe crossing the line when you need to. You know, I'm gonna say that's the kind of vibe I'm getting from this. This is the kind of story this painting is giving me. So just aside from its advertisement, right, I think it's also really important to look at art from your own perspective. It's there to inspire, invoke thought and awe and all sorts of things. You know, if it makes you think about a lot of these different things, it's done its job. It's not supposed to be just aesthetics, you know. So I think it's important to look at art that way to get your creativity flowing, especially if you are an aspiring artist, to practice your imagination. And I think with art, it's open to a lot of interpretation, whether you look at something and it reminds you of your personal experiences, or personal life, you know, what is going on in your head or what's going on around or whatever. You know, it might not even need to be about you. It could be just about life, you know, things that you notice that happen around, you know, the repeating themes in people and stories, you know, that they have in their lives, you know, or what's unraveling in their life, you know, or what's unraveling between these two characters. Even I think, I think it's important to dive into art that way, not just its historical elements, not just talking about, you know, well, what did that mean at the time? You know, what did the artist actually mean when he painted it? Like, I'm not saying that it's wrong, but it shouldn't be the only way. Me personally, I've gone to museums with some people, and the only thing that they were able to see is these like very factual sort of things, like it was in this time period and it sold for this much, and you know, it influenced so and so, but they didn't really dive into it in this like narratives kind of state, like, oh, this is cool, like maybe that's what the guy wearing all black means, you know, this connotation between light and dark, you know, literally night and day, and how one character can represent one and the other one could represent another. You know, one character is holding a book, which could indicate the idea of knowledge and the search of knowledge and truth and enjoying it, and the other one holding luxury, basically, from the cane in his hand to the gloves of like gold quality, right? Or it looks like golden material, and just even his face expression, it sends this like, you know, class warfare sort of attitude that's coming from his face, but yet they're sharing the couch, you know, they're sitting next to each other and whatever. So just getting into that moment, you know, getting into the scene in that sort of perspective in your own view, I think makes art more fun. You know, it shouldn't be just how much do you know factually about a painting. Get into it, you know, think about it creatively, come up with a story, come up with a theme, dig into it that way. I think it just makes it more fun. All right, so yeah, just talked about that. We talked about what this image could mean, and also just the style. It's beautiful work, very characteristic faces, I think, very stylized faces as well. How far are we into this? Can I keep going? I think that I'm gonna go a little bit longer. There's probably a lot with Leyendecker as well. So I'm just gonna have to cut the stream and do another one next week. So you guys are gonna have more beautiful work. So expect this to go on for a while, because I'm gonna say 3 more artists to talk about, and each one of them brings something very cool and beautiful to the table. All right, so yeah, just going along with this one, I'm gonna say maybe this is his earlier work as well, because it's not as stylized. Just looking at the previous paintings and ones that you will see going forward, they're not the same as this. But something to highlight, which is similar with Rockwell's work as well, is the unifying element to his paintings. Like, again, there's like blue and there's like some greens and gold there, but it's I'm gonna say it's like the brightest point, but it doesn't steal the attention. The color of her jacket, what she's wearing, or vest, I'm not really sure, that brown is close in tone to the blue. It's not too dull, and it's not incredibly bright or dark. It's right in between, enough to work well, meld into one another. To the color of her hair as well, draped on the material that she's wearing. Incredible. I'm going to say beautiful rendition of it. Also, how the hair is alive. It's not drawing, like, it's drawing strands, but it's also drawing it in a way where they're melded into one another as well. Like, just paying attention to it. So there's this, I'm going to say there's this, like, softness to the work. There's still detail, but there's like flow, right? It's alive. It's not incredibly detail oriented and over rendered and stiff. Like, her body language, her fingers, they all suggest this relaxed element, as well as, like, in the foreground you see this I don't know, incense burner, I guess. And just like the smoke that's coming from there adds to this like flowing element. And it's also, if you pay attention to it, it's a mixture of all these different things, right? There's like geometrical elements to it, along with these very chaotic sort of free-flowing qualities, like her hair and the smoke and the plants in the background. If you look at the leaves that are there, they're all in this like non-pattern and kind of loose and like chaotic in a sense. And then you got very geometric elements like the shield that's there, and the designs on her I don't know what it is exactly, cape. I'm just gonna say it's a cape. Like all those designerly shapes, these geometric shapes, to the designerly and like geometric shape of the incense burner. It is also, they're also very like straight lines and very I'm gonna say organized, unified shapes. So it's mixing all these things together. The arrows that are in the back, right? The spears that she has, they're also like angled at a certain to a certain degree. All of it mixed into one thing. Geometric elements along with these like chaotic sort of qualities. So all of them combined together create this amazing painting. And something about it says to me season. Like she maybe represents a season. I'm going to say fall based on the leaves. I don't know. I don't know. I can't really think of any other idea to it, but I really like the face expression as well. You know, there's a certain level of confidence, but not cockiness. Like she's not cocky about her position. She's sitting at a throne, but she is in command, basically, yet still relaxed. You know, the other hand suggests a little bit more of a relaxed pose, while the hand on the right suggests a commanding sort of position, right? Along with the shield and the spears there. So it's kind of hard to say, but that's the kind of vibe I'm feeling. I'm feeling that this is a anthropomorphized version of a season of some sort. All right, let's move on. And here is, I think this is another one that was sold for a lot of money. But you could see how different that is, right? In comparison to the previous one. Like this is very stylized. And it does have this like graphic design early element to it. Again, using the black lines as a way of like popping out the figure, giving some sort of depth there. Because if you take it out, even if like you like use your fingers and try to cover it up on the screen, just take away those black lines and just see how the image kind of falls flat a little bit. Not to say the rendering isn't amazing. It's absolutely great, and it does have 3D element to it, but those lines, again, really add another punch of dimension. So yeah, just very stylized rendering of the ball as well, the football itself. And the face, the face has that fantastical element as well, right? Everything else kind of has an exaggerated feel to it, something that you would see in like an illustration comic book of some sort, or book, some sort of novel that has just like one-page drawings or something. But if you look at the eye is so well done that it looks like kid's staring right back at you, and he's in the thick of his emotions, him getting beat up in football, basically. Pretty small for a football player. Anyways, I don't know what the message there is. If you really think about it, the kid shouldn't be so beat up when and he shouldn't be playing football nonetheless. So maybe it just suggests somebody who's really tough-skinned. It could be somebody that's really tough-skinned, but yet still youthful on the inside. A representation of that in a way. Sometimes that's used as a general message. It's not as literal as it seems. It's maybe a metaphor for certain types of people. There are people out there who are like that. They're basically babies. Mentally they're kids. If you talk to them, they behave, react, think like children, but they're tough. They'll be able to actually take a punch, or they'll be able to stand their ground in some way, despite being limited psychologically and mentally. So you could look at it that way. Why not? As I mentioned, it's great to just come up with your own theories. It might not even be the case at all whatsoever. This could have been just like a design based on some sort of theme of the time, or idea coming from one of his, I guess, contractors or whatever. But take an opportunity and create an interesting conversation, an interesting thought, an interesting way to interpret. That's kind of what I'm seeing there. That's the way I'd like to see it. Okay, moving on. And this is the last one for the night. I will be back to do more of J.C. Leyendecker. But here is another example, and this is something in contrast to the very first painting, if you guys remember, where it was more towards 1800s, right? Where their makeup and wigs that they were wearing with those decadent dresses, and the getup of the guy, of the male, was very different to this. So it was only in a short period of time too, because again, he's 1874. He's probably started painting 20 years later, so it was like 1894, right? I wouldn't put it past him that he was painting at 20. Incredible work. But he was capturing that time period and what people of that upper class were dressing like. And then a couple of years later, I'm going to say like 20, 30 years later, it changed to this. So it's a huge contrast, unlike what we have now. Like if you compare, let's say 2010 to 2020, is there really that much of a difference in style? Is there really any sort of like huge gap as you're seeing now? And I mean, as you're seeing in this slide, from what you saw of like the 1800s to, I'm going to say this is 1920s. So in a matter of 30 years, the style has really shifted. The wigs are gone. The makeup is gone. The man has different outfits. His pants are completely different. They don't have that bunched up element that comes up to the knees. They're not wearing wigs anymore. They're embracing more of a natural look, yet having these like lavishing material. Like you could see the gown that she's wearing, it's also like a velvety sort of feel to it, or look to it rather, along with that I don't know, what is it, a shawl of some sort that she's wearing that's also suggesting rich. Who's gonna wear something like that going somewhere that's super white? It's gonna get dirty in no time. So these people are, taking all sorts of shortcuts to get to their destinations. And you could even tell by the design of the I don't know, stairwell handles, I guess, that obviously they're at some lavishing party, as well as with the drapery of, or the design of the lantern. The chandelier, not lantern. The chandelier design over there. So all that is intentionally there. They're all put together. Like you would say, like, well, is that just there because he took a snapshot and that's what was present? It's there because it adds to this element of decadence, and also it's contrasting two elements. You look at their work and there's like minimalism to it, right? These shapes are kind of minimalized, like they're solid colors. There's solid colors of her shawl and solid colors of her dress, and solid colors when it comes to what the guy is wearing. It's pretty much all black and white, very, very minimal, and it's posed next to these very intricate, winding details, and I think that's what makes it so cool to look at. One is at the top right, one is at the bottom left, and it's there to just kind of fill this scene and kind of pin them or sandwich them in between these very decadent sort of designs, these very meticulous styles, whereas they're a lot more minimalist and plain, quote unquote. I'm gonna say it's also a mix of like Art Deco, right? It's like or Art Noir rather. It's like right in between that and his own style. It's a little bit of both. I also really like, and I'm not sure if that's intentional, but how his suit is just part of the background. Like there is no real distinguishment. He's kind of like blended into this black light. And also note that it's stylized light, because you look at them, right? You look at her face, you look at his face, and there's bright light that's hitting them. They're completely illuminated. She's completely illuminated from head to toe. yet they're standing somewhere where it's pitch black. So that's unrealistic. If there's so much light hitting her, it would also hit the stairs. It would hit his coat. It would hit his pants. But stylistically, it's done otherwise. It's creating this contrast, which really pops them out. And I absolutely love the color use here. That soft yellow and how it kind of adds to the material. It really does show this like plush softness to what she's wearing. Very cool. And I also really like everything about this painting. But specifically, I really like the hands, how he drew the hands for both. The female hand is very delicate. The length of her neck is very delicate also. A lot of it is just really smooth, right? There's like a real smooth element to a lot of this. His hand is also very much like a masculine sort of pose, yet still suggests decadence. And also the design, or how he painted the inside of his vest, like it really pops out, but it also has some sort of softness to it. I don't know, I guess I can't describe it any better than that. That fine line, that white highlight that shows the inside of the vest, and that dark light showing the shadow of the other side of the vest, as well as that straight, I'm gonna say the straight line down of the button shirt, I guess makes it very interesting design, right? Because I don't think that a shirt would be as straight as that. There would be some crinkles. That line going down would be there would be a lot more variation to it. It wouldn't be as straight as it is down. But because it's coupled in with all these other realistic renditions, it brings this very unique look to it. So it just shows how in control over he is of all of this stuff. Like, he's intentionally doing every little thing here, from the design of the chandeliers sandwiched between these minimalist styles of their clothes, to like just that button down shirt I was talking about. He thinks of it all, and none of it is just let me just do it to fill in the space. He knows how to fill in all of it the way he wants it. All right, everybody. So that's me gushing about J.C. Leyendecker, about Norman Rockwell. I hope you guys enjoyed this as much as I did. I didn't even realize the time is passing by. I'm sure this is way past the point. I had a blast. I hope you guys did too. I hope this was a good end to the week, and I hope you guys enjoy your weekend. And if you do enjoy this content, just remember to hit that like and subscribe button. They're both helping to grow the stream, and of course, they're greatly appreciated by me. So stay tuned for next week, guys. I'm going to be continuing on, of course. I'm going to be talking about more of J.C. Leyendecker. I'm going to show you guys more of his work. I'm going to introduce you to a new artist as well. So there's more to come. So tune in to more of Art Lounge Alley next week. I'm also going to be doing some more special intros that aren't connected to this. So a lot more content to come your way. All right, everyone, enjoy your weekend, and I'll see you next week.